Call to order the May 6, 2025 meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. Jean, could you take our roll, please?
Kate Kelly? Here. Sean Kevin?
Here.
Eitan Goldberg?
I am here.
Peter Boynton?
Aye.
John Simons and Chris Kasorik are absent today, correct? Okay, we will start. So that means most of the stuff I think will just need a majority vote of the quorum that we have, the three of us, and we'll go from there. So continued public hearings, Jean, annual town meeting zoning bylaw amendments, Articles 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, as well as those will continue until our next meeting without taking any evidence?
Yep.
Okay, so those are going to be continued until May 6th, 2025. I'm sorry,
13th.
May 13th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in room,
1131, the athletics office.
in the athletics office at the high school, where we will hold our planning board meeting right before town meeting, where we will vote on any items that are open keep open any hearings that are open, as well as vote on the water capital improvements, debt authorization, and anything else that may come up between now and then. And that'll be at the athletics office, May 13th at 6 p.m. Okay. We'll do A&R plan, 49 Sutton Hill Road, Robert and Pauline Kellen. The Form A plan proposes to divide map 97 lot 15, 49 Sutton Street into 3 buildable lots, one of which has a dwelling on it. The property is located in the R3 zoning district. Jean, why don't you tell us about that one?
Yep, so this is a 2.7 acre parcel of land. It's located at the corner of Sutton Hill Road and Heath Road. The plan meets frontage, access to the frontage, lot size, and lot width requirements. It's a little difficult to see here, but there's an existing home here. And so the property line for that home, if you can follow my cursor, goes like that, which creates lot 2, which fronts here on Heath Road. So it's this parcel. And then lot 3 is this line right here. And it also fronts on Heath Road.
And where the lot with the residence on it, where's the frontage on that one?
On Sutton Hill Road, so right, it's extensive frontage all the way from.
All the way to there, okay.
The driveway comes right in at the corner.
Okay, so we have 3 lots. They all meet the square footage for zoning.
Yep, it's in R3, which requires only 25,000 square feet. So the existing parcel remains with, the existing residence remains with 66,000. And then the other 2 are approximately 25,113 and 26,194.
Okay, so although this doesn't confirm anything regarding buildable, we don't have to make any markings saying non-buildable or anything like that, correct?
I'm sorry?
We don't have to make any markings that these are non-buildable
Nope,
lots or anything
nope, they
like that?
comply, the existing residence is shown to comply with required setbacks with
Okay,
the
and-
new property lines.
Okay, and we haven't done an A&R for a while, so the purpose of this is to establish that it, whether or not it does not need, require approval for subdivision, as long as it has the proper frontage on a road, which each lot has, each lot meets zoning, and each lot has access.
And I'll just add that this dashed line here is the watershed protection district.
Okay.
So the vast majority of all 3 of these lots are outside of the watershed. There's a small portion of the existing resident home that would be in it.
Okay, and therefore it seems to meet, Jean, in your opinion, and my opinion, it meets the criteria for the A&R?
Yes.
Okay, so anyone have any questions? Anything you want to present?
No, I think Jean did a great job.
As always. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the A&R and direct the planner to sign the Form A?
So moves. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's approved.
Thank you.
All right. 922 Dale Street, Joseph McCarthy. Form A plan proposed to subdivide map 104A61, 922 Dale Street into 2 buildable lots. One has a dwelling on it. The property is located in the residential 1 zoning district.
All right, so this is a 5.2 acre parcel of land located in the residential 1 zoning district, which requires a minimum of 2-acre zoning. The applicant has gone before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and he was granted a variance for the contiguous buildable area.
Yeah.
Specifically, the request for variance was 3,457 square feet. His proposed contiguous buildable area is approximately 61,900 square feet, which is 71%. He needs 75%, or 340 square feet. The plan, as you know, I added this later to the packet. Note number 7 has been added, that at their meeting on April 8th, the North Andover Zoning Board granted a variance and relief from section 195(7.1A, contiguous buildable area, to allow 71% CVA where 75% is required. And I included in the packet the variance which was recorded.
Okay, so previously, before the ZBA acted, lots would not have been valid under our zoning, and now they are, given a variance.
It would still be valid for an A&R plan, but technically
But
it
not
would say not a
buildable.
buildable lot.
Right,
Yeah.
right, but now they're buildable. Okay.
And so
yeah,
this
go ahead.
parcel is at the corner of Dale Street and Winter Street. The new proposed lot is at this corner. So again, you can see this dark line. Goes up, comes down over here. So this rear portion is all part of the new lot in order to gain the 2-acre minimum. And then the existing dwelling is on lot 1. And that shape, as you can see, contains the wetlands for the most part
Mm-hmm,
and fronts on Dale Street.
gotcha. And is the purpose to build another residence on lot 2?
Yes.
Okay, just curious. I mean, it doesn't really go into our calculation, but it's in my neighborhood. I'm just curious to what the plan is. Okay, so we have meet zoning, frontage. Frontage for lot 2 is where, Gene?
On
On
Winter
Winter?
Street, right here, and slightly around this corner.
That's why it's got the kind of weird little shape. Okay, so sometimes instead of making like square lots, we make them so that it has enough frontage on there, and that's where the access would be as well, I assume. Is there a driveway?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that looks to be in order. Okay, can we get a motion to approve the Form A plan for 922 Dale Street, as well as a directive for the planner to sign the Form A?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's approved. Thank you, sir.
Wow, it's the most productive speech I've ever given. Thank you.
Man, a few words. All right. Continued public hearings are done. Public meeting, preliminary subdivision plan and pre-application conference for proposed planned residential development, LRC Builders, LLC. Proposed 3-lot preliminary subdivision, Stoneclave Estates. Fancy name. Locus consists of assessor map 104B, lots 139, 140, and 141. Approximately 13.25 acres. The property is located in the R1 zoning district.
So it's important to note that this is a public meeting, not
Okay.
a public hearing, and abutters have not been noticed. Approval of a preliminary subdivision plan does not constitute approval of the subdivision itself, and a preliminary plan cannot be recorded at the registry or at land court. A submission enables the applicant, the board, and other municipal agencies to provide comment regarding the proposed plan. The preliminary discussion should not bind the applicant or the board. And then I provided a few notes that the dimensional table shown on this cover sheet is theoretical only, so these houses have not been sited on the lots. The layout of the proposed storm and surface water drainage system is not complete yet. No areas of the plan depicted as floodplain, and the development will require both septic systems and wells. This is a little bit different than preliminary subdivision plans we've seen in the past. They usually start with a preliminary. The board tends to deny the preliminary, and then it's followed up with a definitive plan. And the input given at this time is incorporated into definitive plan for a subdivision. The applicant has indicated that they are proposing that the intent of this plan is to gain consent that the subject lot can yield 3 buildable lots, and then the applicant intends to file a site plan for a planned residential development. So PRDs can be filed under either a subdivision, which they almost always are, or a site plan. Procedures to apply for a PRD include submission of a preliminary PRD plan and to schedule a pre-application conference. So this is serving 2 roles here. So after the subdivision plan, we can look at the preliminary PRD plan. And again, it's just a conference with the board.
Does this count towards that?
This counts towards the preliminary subdivision plan and the preliminary conference for the planned residential development.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Quite some time ago, we had a discussion on the board about some types of preliminary meetings where abutters are not notified. In some cases, those have gone on for a while, and I think we came to some agreement that for projects that are of a certain size, we were going to ensure that abutters were aware.
Yeah.
So to me, the question is, and we had quite a discussion about, you know,
Yeah.
we're not trying to say this for everything.
Yeah.
And I think for this, it's perhaps, is it of that size and location or not? But when I saw this, it raised the question in my mind.
So one, I don't know enough about it. I guess we'll hear more and can kind of talk about that. But actually, I don't think this applies because those were discussion items that we had. This is actually a public meeting under the state law and bylaws. So when you're applying for a subdivision, the rules require this initial public meeting, and it actually specifies that this is the approach to take. So I actually don't, I think when we have a rule to follow, we follow the rule.
Right.
The discussion items, there weren't really rules as to when we
Right.
do that, so I think it wouldn't apply.
But you
just
know
to-
what I'm
Yes,
referring to.
I do.
Right.
But I think this doesn't apply because it's a subdivision.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yep.
raise it
Yep.
so that the board could consider the question.
Yep.
And thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Gene.
Okay, all right, so this will count as the beginning of the PRD process, as well as, they could choose to go through that as a subdivision or as a site plan, and this begins that process.
Right.
Okay,
And as you said, subdivision rules and regs and the zoning bylaw require this process. It's not arbitrary, it's a requirement within the rules.
okay, so, and yes, we haven't had a subdivision in a while, but generally, when it comes as a preliminary, most of the time, it does not have all of the things that would be required for approval, which is kind of part of the process, which is okay. So why don't we hear from the applicant about what you're proposing or what you're looking to do, if you have questions or things that you'd like us to comment on, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Good evening, Ben Osgood Jr., Ranger Engineering Group, representing LRC Builders. Robert Innes and David Innes are LRC Builders. I think you may be familiar with them. They've done work in town before. If you could go to the next page, I guess the next one, existing conditions. This is the existing property. It's on Stonecleave Road on the planned south side. Boxford Street is to the right on this plan, and Duncan Drive is up at the top of the plan. This property spans between Duncan Drive and Stonecleave Road. It was developed back when they did Stonecleave Road, and these lots were actually configured at that time. And the property encompasses 3 existing lots. One of them is 11.25 acres. Another is 1.06, and another is 1 acre, total of 13.31 acres. These lots were configured when the zoning bylaw was, in this area, was just 1 acre, way back in the early 80s. So you can see the frontage on Stonecleave Road. We have a wetland in the front. It's an isolated wetland. Under the town regulations, it is a protectable wetland. There's also a wetlands up in the top of the page there. And that wetlands runs all the way out to Duncan Drive. If you want to go to the next page. So this is our proposed preliminary subdivision. Each of the lots has 2 acres, at least 2 acres, and the required buildable area to each. The roadway, Gene did cite a few deficiencies, but the roadway is 50-foot layout. We showed 24 feet of pavement, but it could easily be 26. The cul-de-sac is the proper size. The intent is to design it per the subdivision regulations. We did show an approximate drainage system. There'd be 2 areas of, right in there is a stormwater system that would collect most of the water from the road and the areas around the houses. The second stormwater system will be up on the front, right at the front of right in that area there. As Gene said, the purpose of this plan, what we need to do is prove to the planning board that we can develop 3 lots. So that's the purpose of this plan. We don't really want to do it this way. We want to do it in a more environmentally friendly way. We have not placed houses on this plan yet. And you can go to the grading and drainage, which is the next sheet. So that shows the grading. There's a lot of topography on this property, but it's a rolling topography. It's humps and hummocks in the front. But generally the road, the grade of the road is only about 5% coming up the hill, then it goes down at 2%, so it's a very slight grade. And obviously this is a huge cul-de-sac for 3 houses. Doing it this way, we'd have to build the houses off the roads, septic systems on each individual lot. And I estimate that there would be at least 5 to 6 acres of clearing doing this preliminary plan. But it does meet all the regulations, and I guess what we're looking for is just concurrence from the planning board that, okay, this yield plan yields 3 lots, and then we could come in and apply for a PRD that has 3 houses. So I don't know if we want to just, if you can bring it up to the PRD plan, if you wanted to go into that to show the alternative. So here's the alternate plan. And under the PRD, as Gene said, there you can develop as just a site plan, or you can develop it as a subdivision roadway. I think to get the best spacing, siting, just doing a site plan optimizes what we're able to do. We don't have any road setbacks per se. We do have a limit of 50 feet setback between houses, but we're a lot more flexible on where we can put things. We can still develop some nice lots, but we have a lot more flexibility to really cut down the amount of disturbance with the project. So in this scenario, we have about 3.2 acres of disturbed area, and that's within that limited disturbance, the proposed tree line, which you see in green. We do have area to put the wells, we have areas to put the septic, and the storm water would be, all in, where the blue areas are shown, and there would probably be combination filter or bioretention areas with some stormwater storage above, and outlets to control the flow of water as well as provide the treatment that's required under the stormwater management regulations. We would also cut down the size of the roadway. We've shown here is a 20-foot paved common driveway or roadway to service these 3 houses. The cul-de-sac is 90 feet in diameter versus the 100 feet that normally under the subdivision regulations. is required, but still allows a fire truck to get up the road and, make the turning radius. We've thought about doing common driveways with smaller, widths and not as large a turnaround, maybe a hammerhead. But in this case, in this area, there is no town water. There is town water on Boxford Street, but when this was built, there wasn't town water in the area. So it's on wells. There can't be a fire hydrant up at the houses, so we felt it was important to leave adequate fire access so that, fire truck doesn't have any trouble getting up the road. They can make a full turnaround and they can get to each house easily. So I guess I'll take it to questions now. I mean, I think you understand what we want to do. And again, we're looking for kind of a concurrence that, okay, this looks like a better alternative than a preliminary plan. And then what we would do from here is design the PRD project and submit that through the special permit process.
So does this leave everything remaining in white as the open space?
Yes.
And it meets all calculations for the open space
Right, there'd
requirement
be far more open space
than required,
than required.
even with the wetlands?
Yep.
Is there any would there be Concom involvement?
Absolutely. They'd have to
Yeah.
file an NOI.
Yeah, there's actually, we stay out of the buffer zone. The wetland up at the top, you can see the 100-foot buffer zone, we're right along the edge. The wetland at the bottom, we just would be 75 feet from the wetlands with our closest clearing. So,
How far is this from, sorry, Sean, how far is this from the fields? Is this the Foster Fields, are they in?
it's a half a mile down the road. You go under the power lines, it's the next road on the left.
Okay, yeah.
Could you speak to the right-of-way easement?
The right-of-way easement for the
Yeah,
subdivision.
yep.
So it would be a site plan. We don't need to propose a right-of-way. It would all be private. It would be maintained by
Well,
the,
I think
Was
he's
it
referring to
the existing right-of-way on
the
the?
30-foot right away, yeah.
oh, okay. That actually is a driveway that goes into, there's a riding ring,
Okay.
a horse boarding facility out there. That's their access. This whole piece of land came from that farm that was out there, and this is how they maintain their access.
Can that be in the open space with the CR on it?
I was reading through the regulations today, and it says that the open space can be divided at the opinion of the planning board. So, where we have, I think we're gonna have a lot of open space, we may even have more than required just on the front portion. I haven't done the exact computation yet.
So it's important, and public access would need to be provided to that
Yep.
open space. It's not contiguous with any other open space, which is somewhat unusual, and if you remember, the town did not exercise its first right of refusal on this property, and that was one of the reasons. It's just isolated residential area.
So they're required to leave open space access to the public?
They would be under a PRD,
Okay,
and it
so
would
I-
have to go to either a nonprofit or under the care, custody, and control of conservation.
And so I would think that as a matter of practice, that somehow that would have to be, it would have to be real rather than illusory, even if even if it's not gonna be actively
Yep.
used, but you couldn't have to cross through fences or go through private yards
Right.
to get to
Yeah.
that, so as long as that's
Um,
met.
And Gene, just a quick question. Is there any, in our regulations, any setbacks we need to have from a right-of-way?
Setbacks for what?
From a right-of-way?
The PRD has very limited setbacks. They don't require lot sizes. I don't think they even require a front setback. The side setbacks are actually 20 feet in total. So if these two houses were immediate adjacent to each other, one can have 0. They can build right to the property line as long as there's 20 on the other lot.
Got it.
It's somewhat unusual, and it's hard to decipher, to be
There's a
honest,
50-foot buffer
all the way around.
around the parcel that cannot have any houses or driveways. Our driveway is right along the 50-foot area out at the front of the property. We did a project similar to this in Andover, and we provided a couple parking spaces out front and a way to get to a walking trail.
Got it.
You know, it's open space, it's gonna be mainly a benefit to the direct abutters,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
Wildlife. whatnot.
yeah.
Generally, we don't have setbacks from the right of way other than you can't interfere with it, right?
Got
That's
it.
the whole purpose of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So if you're like too close to it and interfering and not allowing someone to pass freely, then it's a civil issue between the parties.
That makes sense. And then, so with respect to, I guess, septic and well, is that gonna be shared amongst the 3 dwellings?
No, we would do individual wells and septics.
Got it.
They all have to have 100-foot, the wells have to have 100-foot, you know, radius around them where there's no septic. And that, you know, the way we place these, they all meet that.
Got it.
And it's anticipated to be a homeowners association for the stormwater management,
Right.
maintenance, O&M plan.
Right,
Plow,
right.
by the way.
All the maintenance, even plowing the road
Yep.
would be homeowner.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Peter, anything? Kid, any questions? Okay. I mean, seems, I don't see anything that stands out as a reason not to kind of move forward. I don't think it meets the, I don't think it's something we can approve as a preliminary, doesn't meet everything, but I think just the
Right.
first step in the PRD process, that's fine. I think it makes sense. How big are the houses? Do we have an estimate?
You know, they'll be, these days, they're gonna be normal
Larger.
size houses that any other builder would build in town right now.
Single family?
Single family, yeah.
Okay. Potentially with ADUs if you want,
Right?
just saying. And it's 3, right? It's a 3, you don't need to do any inclusionary zoning. So I think that's fine there. Just going through the checklist in my head.
It's not as easy on the septic systems
Yeah.
to do the extra units,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
Nope, it has to, you have to, that's one of the things we found is you
They
have to.
get very large.
Yep. Okay, all right, so can I get a motion to deny the application for preliminary subdivision approval?
So moved.
So- And everybody saw that you have the decision there.
Yep.
for this, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, look forward,
Sean and Peter?
yep, look forward to seeing the upcoming iterations.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Okay, yep. Yep. Intersection, Osgood, Great Pond Road, Town of North Andover, Department of Public Works. Request for a waiver of a watershed special permit to allow for geometric modifications to the intersection of the Osgood Street, Great Pond Road intersection, new sidewalks, installing signalized crosswalks on all approaches to the signal, utility system adjustments, drainage system modifications, signs, pavement markings, and pavement milling overlay. Well, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, it was. That's the insubstantial.
Right, so a notice of intent has already been filed with GovCAM. They have opened their hearing. The request is for a waiver of watershed special permit. And so what I've asked the conservation administrator to do is to establish the escrow account through conservation. But again, it would be one review. And so Horsley Witten right now has given an estimate, and I anticipate that they will be open in the escrow, and a full stormwater review would be completed if you were to grant this waiver, either way.
So, so right now, we're just asking me to waive the watershed
Yeah.
permit. I guess, can someone tell us, I guess, where this plan comes from and the funding and how it's being done? Because it's obviously well in the works before it gets to us in terms of the traffic. I don't think, I guess my point is, just like a basic summary, high level, because I don't think we need to get into all the traffic and all that, because it's not really related to the watershed issue, which is what's before us.
Yeah, happy to explain. My
Okay.
name is Jake Carmody. I'm an engineer with Van Assen Associates. We're out of Andover, and we've been working with the planning and public works departments on advancing a sidewalk improvement project through the intersection of Osgood Street and Great Pond Road. Just for some context, so this is Osgood Street here, and then Great Pond Road. The project is this shaded yellow area, and all of the yellow circles with the numbers just represent, to put the project in context, that we're in the middle of an area that is full of retail, commercial, multifamily residential, and recreational spaces that has been growing, and there have been sidewalk improvements constructed north of the project in the past few years. This was, I think, 2018 MassWorks project funded. It was related to this development here. And then sidewalks also constructed south of the intersection and along Sutton Street that connect to the ball fields and park space that's all been recently improved. But there's a missing link in the sidewalk network. So that's really what drove the project, is to try to close the gap between the sidewalk network north of the intersection and the sidewalk network south of the intersection, because today you can't walk from one to the other without stepping into the street. And this project would construct a sidewalk between those links, and would also construct a sidewalk that connects to the boat launch area along Great Pond.
That's being redone.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
This project isn't redoing the boat launch, it's just
No,
connecting
I
the
understand.
sidewalks. to
But
that.
that's a separate project that's being
Yes,
done in a similar
Yes.
timeframe.
The sidewalks go beyond the location of the boat launch being,
no, it ends at the boat launch driveway.
So this goes to Mad Maggie's, and
Mhm.
then to the
Boat
end
launch.
to the boat launch, and then north towards the exit of the Butcher Boy parking lot.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And we're also improving the crosswalks and we're adding crosswalks with signalized push buttons to the intersection so that you can safely cross the intersection. And you are probably all familiar with that fast right turn movement you can make if you're heading north on Osgood Street, turning right onto Great Pond. And as a benefit for the pedestrians and the crosswalks, we're actually taking that right turn movement and just pulling it closer to the intersection. So it's a slower movement that, so vehicles approaching the intersection will have to actually slow down to take that right turn.
Is it going to
It will,
change any?
it will still, no, it will
no
still be,
signal.
it will still be like a right turn slip lane.
Yeah.
It will have signal equipment, but really just to facilitate if somebody were to push the push button.
Crossing.
Otherwise, it will operate the same as it does today. And then we've made some geometric improvements to Osgood Street itself. Specifically, across the street from Butcher Boy, there's a large wetland area. That's where the sidewalk is proposed, but we didn't want to put sidewalk out over those wetlands. So we're actually pulling the street a little bit closer to Butcher Boy by a few feet, so that the back of the new sidewalk, it runs parallel with the existing guardrail that's there. And we're not we're not putting impacts into the wetlands there.
How does this is the question I guess I just don't really know. How does this work in terms of, so this is a state road, Mass DOT, do
Yep.
they get input on this? Do we?
Yes,
I don't know if
yeah.
they're planning any projects, or how does that work? Just ensuring that the work we do isn't then gonna have to be torn up for right of way or changing projects and stuff
Yep.
like that?
So the portion of the project that's on Osgood Street, that is Mass DOT jurisdiction. So we are near complete with the Mass DOT access permit.
Okay.
So Mass DOT reviews the proposed improvements, and they have to issue an access permit to us. Once we have that access permit, and we have the necessary town approvals, we'll put the project out to bid. The project is being funded by a MassWorks grant that was awarded to the town to be spent by June next year. So there's finite dollars to spend on it that capture these improvements, and finite timeline to spend those dollars. So we are, and we're also, trying to balance the DOT process takes something like a year. And we're near the end of that, which is good. And now we've got to get the rest of our local approvals and go towards construction.
Gene, any hesitancy or issue with waiving the watershed special permit where we can kind of get what we need out of the Concom process?
No, I don't think so, and DPW engineering is overseeing the project.
Right,
as well.
who's like, who we would have check on it anyway.
Yeah, and the fact that they're doing the stormwater review, it's gonna follow the same process that it would
So-
here.
I would just note that this is almost in the lake.
Yep.
It is one of the closest roadways to, and I'm sure you know, our sole source of drinking water. It is the only significant large intersection that is immediately adjacent to the lake. Now, there has been work this close and closer. For example, on that section of Great Pond Road, further down, DPW did new bulkheads because it was being undercut by wave action. We were not part of that, right, Gene?
I'd have to look. I don't know if it was waived.
Never came before the board,
I don't know if it was waived or not. I'd have to.
they just did it. So, I mean, I'm confident that DPW is a good steward since they run the drinking water plant. But I am a little unsettled as the special permit authority, this board, to have no oversight, it sounds like. And it may be that that's appropriate, given the other players, but I just want to throw that out for discussion. I mean, that is, we're the only watershed special permit authority in the town. That's us. And are we comfortable with that? And maybe we don't even have an alternative.
Well, I think the alternative would be to deny the waiver. They would then submit a request for a watershed special permit, go through the process, we get a peer review. I think that's the only thing we're missing is the peer review.
And we've heard that there's a timing issue, and, you know, this is a very appealing improvement to that nasty intersection and to give some pedestrian access. So I think there's a lot of benefit here, but to me, that peer review could be very helpful for all parties. And is there a way to do that in parallel with everything else so that we don't disturb timelines?
Gene, I'm trying to remember, I think we have condition waivers in the past.
Yep.
So could we condition the waiver on on a peer-reviewed stormwater that's approved through Concom? Or, I don't think we can approve, I don't think we can waive it on the approval. So I think we can definitely condition the waiver on a completed stormwater peer review. But I don't know I don't know if we can then bring it back to sign off on it if we've waived it. I'm just trying to think that through in my head.
Well, if it's conditioned, couldn't it be conditioned on us seeing it?
Okay.
Look, you have to tell me if this doesn't work. It's just,
I'm just thinking.
I
it
think
through.
it's worth our discussing.
Is there standards for granting a waiver or denying a waiver, a request for a waiver? Is
Yeah.
it, and is there precedent where we've done it before or not done it before that would potentially apply?
We've done it many times.
Okay,
And it's usually in the situation where we are, either there's not gonna be, we know that there's not gonna, so usually like with someone doing a pool is where we usually do the watershed waivers, and those are pretty frequent. They're small, we have been told about the different, what's gonna be put in, and we're confident. Sometimes we have DPW do the stormwater review, but don't make them go through the full process. So often it's done when like, I don't have any concern that this would pass the full process, it's just a timing issue.
So have they gone through Concom yet?
Not yet,
So-
They've opened with Concom.
they've opened.
Yeah, so I guess in theory, we could run a parallel process to Peter's point, right? Because they're doing a full NOI with Concom, so I imagine, and especially as close it is to the lake, I'm sure they probably have comments, right?
And just, I don't want to belabor this, but
Yeah.
it's two things. It is very close to the lake, but maybe more importantly, there's no other major intersection like this that close to the lake.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of roadway associated
Sure.
things
Yeah.
But,
that are right on the edge.
so, but let's just walk it through, like, you're putting in sidewalks.
Right.
What is the possible downside of putting in sidewalks?
I think,
As opposed to
If
having
it's-
roadway there?
well, roadway would be a much higher level of concern. As long as the sidewalks are done correctly, I think we're gonna be in good shape. But that's why a peer review would be helpful, because there'll be some land disturbance to get the sidewalk in. And how does that affect everything draining into the lake
Yeah,
from
it's-
that very large intersection?
I mean, Peter, you bring up a great point, because you got, and there's questions on, like, you're adding potentially more impervious surface, right? They would have more runoff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
could be that the
Why
sidewalks
don't we listen to
Yeah.
these guys?
give better control of the
Yeah,
runoff.
I don't know,
But
it's a good point, yeah,
how do we know?
yep.
What do you guys have to say?
Yes, the total project has a 0.17 acres of additional impervious within the whole project limits. To get to that, we actually reduced some of the pavement width that exists, specifically on Osgood Street. There's an existing stripe median that we were able to reduce the size of that. And when we removed that large right turn, thanks, Gene, that existing right turn paved movement, that all gets shrunk down and pulled up closer to the intersection, further
Away-
from the
away
lake.
from the lake.
Away from the
Yeah,
lake,
which-
yeah.
Which is great,
And that would become grass.
right.
On the northeast Butcher Boy side of the project, there's a large grass area. Some of that is in the right-of-way. It is partially constrained with some underground utilities, but with the space that's available, we are putting in a bioretention garden to improve water quality runoff.
Great,
And so that's within the space that we had available.
Right.
Typically with these roadway projects, we don't have a lot of space.
right.
So we wanted to do what we could with the space that was available to improve the water quality, because, considering especially where we are.
And it's actually gonna be 3,900 square foot less that's being driven on. So there's a slight increase in impervious, but it's more foot traffic
Yeah.
because it's sidewalk.
So, this is all good, but
Yeah.
to me, it's more than just optics, that we have a significant project right on the boundary of the drinking water supply. And what did we do as the sole permitting authority? And it's more than optics to say, well, there was a peer review.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Peter on this one, right? Because at the end of the day, it's within our jurisdiction. There's net addition of impervious surface, and while I'm definitely convinced that I'm sure we're designing for infiltration and things like that, I mean, it's so close to the lake, so we just, without someone looking at it, right, it's really hard to grant a waiver, you know?
Because
So-
how would we answer the question? Okay.
Well, we don't have the data, because we can't
something-
answer the question,
Something
right?
bad has happened down
Yeah.
the road.
Yeah,
You guys granted a waiver, fine, you're allowed to do that.
yeah,
What was the basis of the waiver?
yes.
So where's, I'm just trying
And
to, where's
do you,
the,
do you have, so the letter from Epsilon lays out a lot of the things that you were just talking about the impacts of the project, positive and negative, and, but do you have, and so for that reason, we're asking for a waiver from the peer review process, among other things, to not have to get a watershed special permit, because the peer review process wouldn't add anything, or?
Yeah, so full transparency, in 2020, Epsilon was involved with the Sutton Street Sidewalk Improvement Project, and we did request a waiver to the watershed special permit for that project. I think it was 2020. It was granted. We felt as though the review through conservation in North Andover is very thorough, as you know, and they hold that lake to the same standard as this board. It is the sole source of drinking water in North Andover. So they're very careful about anything that's done there. And when this project was being designed, the intent was to hold the line of the existing guardrail and not get any closer to the lake or the wetlands up near Casablanca. So that's why the roadway's being shifted slightly away from the lake to be able to hold that line, install a new guardrail, new sidewalk, new curbing, new catch basins in certain locations. But to get...
Can I pause for a question so we don't
Sure.
lose? You just said the roadway is being shifted, which you talked to us about earlier.
Yep,
Being shifted away from what?
away from the lake.
Away from the lake or away from the wetland by Casablanca?
So both.
Okay, so when it shifts away from the wetland by Casablanca, I think geometry, at least as I'm visioning it, if you go away from the Casablanca wetland, you are going towards the lake.
Well, so, yeah.
This is the intersection.
Where do you get them?
In the center of the
you're-
road, that gets smaller, so we're bringing this curb line in about 6 feet, but we're not moving 6 feet out.
Like a Google Map thing?
Right.
It's only a 2-foot shift that goes right here,
Right.
not to nothing.
So it's another example of what strikes me as thoughtful, good work. I appreciate that there was a waiver before. I just feel that we need to have a basis for a waiver, given the
You
unique
just got that on
location.
Andover side.
And then the other thing I wanted to point out was that, like Greg was describing on Great Pond Road, where so this is running along Great Pond Road, and then down here, the boat launch is over here. The sidewalk is along the reservoir side of the street, but the back of the sidewalk is at the location of the existing, face of the existing guardrail, such that we're not impacting that slope that goes down towards the reservoir. To create the space for that sidewalk, we're widening the street on the other side of the street.
Towards the residences?
Correct.
Yes,
Yep.
it's like, well, it's really the back side of the Butcher Boy.
Butcher Boy, yeah.
where
Isn't
that-
there some type of a power
there's an old-
substation?
There's an old sewer.
Like a sewer lift
substation,
station,
there's
yeah.
Oh,
old-
okay, yeah.
There's a space that's right now just weed whacked between the utility poles and the street, and that's where
Yeah.
some of that will become paved.
Gene, do you know offhand what bylaw, the watershed, I'm trying to find the criteria for the permit. and I
For the
can't-
waiver?
Yeah, for the waiver, thank you.
It's more about construction activity, like traditional construction,
Yeah, I think it mentioned structures.
structures and.
Oh, I
And that
saw
was really
that,
the intent.
that's under the building one.
So it's 424, waiver of a special permit. When construction proposed on an existing structure within the watershed will not expand the existing footprint of the structure and will not disturb existing topography and is proposed on town sewer, the planning board may determine without a public hearing that submission of a watershed special permit application is not needed.
So none of,
So
You know,
it
and-
wait,
doesn't-
so do
it
they
doesn't
need a
fit.
watershed special permit when they're not building a structure? Do they need a permit
Yes.
to build
You
sidewalks?
need a special permit if you're removing vegetation that's not a landscaped island or topography changes. So the closest, so this is non-disturbance buffer zone? Any activity which cause a change in topography or grade,
Okay.
vegetation removal, construction of new permanent structure, only after variance, replacement of permanent structure, and then it gets into any surface or subsurface discharge, including but not limited to stormwater runoff. So there's gonna
Okay.
be stormwater runoff.
Okay. Because, yeah, the waiver stuff seems to talk to structures. This is not a structure. Okay.
Well, here are the options. We can hold this to see if our other two members have any strong opinion one way or the other. We could vote on it now, or, well, I guess those are the two options. We could vote on it now, and my sense is that it's likely to be a denial with, and then then there can be a full, okay, what would the process be time-wise from here if we denied the waiver request?
They'd need to apply for a watershed special permit,
Yeah,
which takes a month before it gets before you. The stormwater review will be ongoing, because that's
Yeah.
getting started with the Conservation Commission. So
Yeah.
I would expect within that month, we'd have at least one letter and possibly a response to that letter turned around.
but it probably wouldn't be finished within that month anyway.
There's not too much we can do for stormwater
Yeah.
improvements. That's really the difficulty with this project. There's not a lot available, other than replacing some of the existing structures with new deep sump catch basins with hoods, the buyer retention area that we're shoehorning into that little lawn area.
Yeah. And it may be that it slightly makes things better, slightly makes things worse, does nothing, but I think these guys' point is we don't know any of that, right? And it may be that a slight increase in runoff is a worthwhile trade-off for people not getting hit by cars, right? I mean, that may be a worthwhile trade-off. It depends on the
Those
numbers.
things aside, the fact that there's recognition that there's not a lot you can do here
Yeah.
highlights to me, therefore there should be a peer review, because there's constraints.
Well, it's gonna be peer
It's gonna be
reviewed.
peer reviewed either way.
It's gonna be peer
Yeah.
reviewed either way. The question is whether or not
Yeah.
we need to do full permitting.
I mean, can we condition it, or can we continue it until we actually get a peer review? Like, in other words, it's like, once we have the information, because if it's gonna get peer reviewed anyway, right, why don't we keep it on the agenda, continue it until we get the peer review, right?
Yes, so we could, but I guess what's the point of doing that if we deny it, then we've wasted
Yeah,
another month.
true.
It's another month.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, my point is, if it's gonna take a month to do this anyway, what's the downside, I guess, what's the cost, I guess, of doing the full permitted application?
Could I ask,
Yeah.
just for clarity, so is the permit, if we have to do a special permit, is that just within 250 feet of the reservoir, or is that the whole project? I don't know if that's a question for you. or
Yeah,
for-
so
or
it
for
would
them.
be, so our entire project is
It's within
within
the-
one of the zones.
Right,
Yes.
so
For
there's
either the wetlands
the
or the
200,
lake.
that's with Concom, so
Which we're doing.
what you're doing, but you're in the watershed protection district as a whole, everywhere in this project.
Oh,
is
okay.
within the watershed special permit district. So
Okay.
any work you do in that generally requires a watershed special permit. The purpose of that is not necessarily to analyze sidewalks or anything like that, it's to analyze what's the impact on the water, on the lake. And usually we waive it if it can be proven that there's not going to be any impact. So if you're building a pool and you put in a retention system and that pool is 250 feet from the lake, and we now know you're gonna be actually doing something that will make it so that there's no impact, then we waive it, because we don't need to go through the full process. It doesn't sound like this is something that would likely get, I don't know where that gets to. So,
And apparently, the permit requirement was waived in 2020 for the Sutton Street, not comparable necessarily, because it might not have been as close to the lake or as
It
impactful.
definitely was not as close to the
no,
lake.
it was, yeah,
So just to distinguish it, if we are
they're different.
not
Yeah.
waiving,
Okay, so let's assume, let's say we denied the waiver, Gene, are we really slowing things up or costing ourselves time or that much money? It doesn't seem like, because the peer review is usually usually one of the considerations is making an individual go through a peer review, which is expensive.
Yeah.
Here, we're doing that anyway, so that's not an added cost, there's no added cost there. And if time, until time is a factor, it doesn't seem like time is going to really be much of a change, because, man, a few weeks, but you're already gonna go through the Concom, which is gonna take you through
another month or so, it seems.
Yep. So the added cost is the abutter notification.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna do a abutter notification from the limit of this scope, because it's not really a parcel, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that catches.
Yeah, well, we have the list for conservation.
conservation.
And we notified abutters for the notice of intent, so they're aware. I don't think anybody showed up, surprisingly, to the last conservation hearing. But abutters were notified, and we do have the list.
Yeah, so we'd need to notify them again, so it's just one of the steps. But that still lines us up for a month from now, if possibly opening, and I don't think we'd be that far off of Concom's review. I think
I'm just trying to see when their next meetings are.
And full disclosure, I am an abutter for this process, for this project, but I'm not, and I was notified. But it doesn't affect my questions.
Okay, thank you.
So their next meeting's the 14th, and I believe they meet every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
or at least twice a month, so.
Okay,
Are we on the 14th?
Yeah, yep.
okay, so why don't we take so can I get a motion to deny the request for a waiver?
So moved. Second.
All in favor of the motion, meaning to deny?
Aye.
All opposed? I oppose. 2-1, so the waiver is not granted, so you would need to apply for a watershed special permit. Okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
thank you. I will say that seems like a really good idea, good project, keep moving forward. Let's just be a little more formal. So this was worthwhile to ask and to get our opinion. I think the board feels it needs to just be a little more buttoned down.
So can I just ask a quick question? Well, we're in early communication with Horsley Witten.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that we need to relay to Horsley Witten that they would need to look at for this board that they wouldn't normally be looking at, or just the notice of intent?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is changes in impervious surface, changes in questions of how much runoff would go into the lake, what erosion control measures would be put in place, and what stormwater, I know you said it might be limited, but what could be put in place to mitigate any of the changes, both during construction and then post.
it's the same Mass Stormwater Handbook that we're being held to, so
Yeah.
in their regulations and ours. The only difference is if there's a nuance within the watershed bylaw that requires something on your plan that isn't shown on your NOI plan, that may trigger her review. Like, one thing, for example, is a statement from the engineer that it won't degrade the lake, either quantity or quality. It's a statement required in our permit that's not required in their permit, so.
Got it.
There's just some nuances in the special permit bylaw that she's gonna go through and compare against your filing.
Somebody's stamp.
Okay,
Good. Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sounds like a great project.
Yeah.
Okay, 1450 Osgood Street, Amazon.com Services LLC, on behalf of owner Osgood RT, 125 Project DST. Request for insubstantial change to the May 20th, 2020 site plan review, parking, common driveway, building height and floor area ratio special permits, which was amended by notice of decision dated October 6th, 2020, and an insubstantial change dated October 3rd, 2023, to allow for approval to convert an existing row of parking spaces into a designated drop-off and pickup area. All right, Gene, you want to tell us about this one?
So we did receive a letter of authorization from the property owner, which is what delayed this at your last meeting. That's included in your packet, as well as the transfer. So the entity changed from Osgood Route 125 Project DST to LLC. I'm sorry, LLC was converted to DST in the ownership. Fire department has reviewed it. They have no concerns with what's shown, other than they want to make sure that no additional speed bumps are being added to the parking lot. There's a considerable amount there today, and they don't want to impede their access.
So So is the gist of this that when it's shift change, there's a lot of cars just lined up in the middle of the roadway? And instead of that, we're gonna have a designated area where they should wait, similar like at the airport, like all the Uber should be here instead of just spaced out everywhere, taking all the spaces?
Yes, that's correct. So Frank Holmes with Langen. And on the approved plan, there were, and per Amazon's standards for their site plans, there are drop-offs on either side of the main entry with the intent that that's where people get dropped off. But I think what they're finding is people's behavior is different, and, you know, they want to get right to the front door as close as they can to the front door to drop people off and pick people up. And so it's creating a lot of issues during shift change with people stop there and people trying to, you know, leave the parking lot or you know, arrive and just park their car. And there's a safety concern with that as well, with sort of being very crowded and people acting a little erratically in their cars. So, you know, Amazon, mainly from a organization standpoint, to try to control the shift change a little better. And from a safety standpoint, we would like to make this change.
Okay. And this is all within the Amazon back portion of
Yes,
property?
this is the main entrance of Amazon, so it's directly in front of the main entrance.
Yeah. So I appreciate them actually seeing what is working and not working on the ground and coming and making a change. Sometimes that happens a little too late, so I think it's good that they're doing that sooner rather than trying to force things. So I don't have any questions. It seems appropriate and seems insubstantial.
Yep.
Questions, comments? Anybody? Okay. Motion to approve insubstantial change for 1450 Osgood Street.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And I'll document
Thank
that
you.
in
Yep.
a memo to them.
Thank you.
Great. Yep.
If you do that, I'll document that in a memo and get it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 15th?
So moved.
Well, I watched it, I guess. So can I second that one?
Sure.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so for next week, as Gene and Peter sort of laid out, we will have a meeting at 6 o'clock to go over anything that's still open. That way, in case I don't anticipate that there'll be any new information that comes up on any of our zoning articles, but just in case, we keep the public hearings open. We still need to vote our recommendation on the debt authorization, so we'll make that recommendation on the water capital improvements. And I will bring some food to eat, so that we can have a nice, get sustenance for our long, arduous town meeting that is anticipated.
It's great for the morale of the board.
I agree. It's always fun. So if you do have suggestions, let me know.
Well, you know my suggestions.
I do. I just don't know how well the lobster rolls keep in the car.
Oh,
Yeah, it could be a problem.
Yeah, we don't want any food
I don't know,
poisoning.
prior chair figures it out.
I don't call that. All right.
And it is room 1131, and it's the athletic conference room.
Okay. Okay, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well done.
So I have a question.